Dr. Ryan Cole walked slowly through the dark halls of the old research station. His helmet light cut through the dark and showed that broken equipment was all over the place. Chairs were turned over, computer screens were broken, and weird green liquid dripped from broken containers on the walls. Something bad must have happened here a long time ago because everything felt wrong. Ryan had been traveling through space for 2 weeks to get here. The station was floating out near the Kepler belt, which is far from where ships usually go. 3 days ago, someone heard a distress signal coming from this place. The company didn't want to deal with it at first. Old stations set off false alarms all the time. Ryan had said he would check it out, though. He was a xenobiologist, which means he studied life forms from other planets. He thought this might be important. As he walked deeper into the building, the glass under his boots crunched. The air was old and cold. His breath came out in little clouds inside his helmet. He would stop and listen every few steps. The station made noise like an old ship all around him. He could hear the hum of failing life support systems somewhere in the distance. Ryan looked at his scanner. It was showing a sign of life 2 levels down. Only one. No matter what had happened here, only one thing was still alive. He found the stairs and went down them. Things were even worse on the lower levels. There were scorch marks all over the walls. Some doors had been ripped off their hinges all the way. Ryan saw deep claw marks on the metal. Something had fought hard down here. Something had been in trouble. There was a heavy security door at the end of a long hallway that led to the life sign. Ryan walked up to it slowly. The door was half open but trash was stuck in it. He pushed through the opening and ended up in what looked like a detention area. There were cells on both sides of a narrow room. Most of them were empty. But he saw movement in the last one. Ryan's heart started to race. He walked toward the cell and with each step, his light bounced. The bars on the cell were thick and strong like those used to keep dangerous criminals in. But the bars were partly melted and twisted out of shape by some kind of very high heat. He could see through the holes. There was a girl pressed into the far corner. She wasn't a person. Her skin was pale blue and almost glowed in the dark. Some of the scars were old and faded, while others were more recent. She was too thin, like she hadn't eaten well in months. She was rocking back and forth a little bit with her arms around her knees. Ryan froze, though, when he saw her eyes. They were so big that they covered almost half of her face and they were all black. He couldn't see any white parts or pupils. Just solid black balls that acted like mirrors for the light from his helmet. And they were looking at him with such intensity that it made his skin crawl. Ryan thought she was young, maybe like a human in their late teens or early 20s. It was hard to tell with aliens. There were small bumps on her scalp, but she didn't have any hair on her head. Ryan said softly, "Hey," trying to keep his voice calm and gentle. Her ears were pointed and seemed to move on their own like a cat's. "It's fine. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm here to help." The girl didn't say anything. Those black eyes of hers just kept looking at him. Ryan could tell that she was breathing quickly and shallowly. She was very scared. He slowly raised both of his hands, palms out, to show that he didn't have any weapons. "Look, I don't have anything in my hands. I just want to get you out of here. Do you understand me?" Nothing happened for a while. After that, the girl's lips pulled back, and Ryan would never forget the sound she made. It was a hiss, but not like any animal he had ever heard before. It sounded like metal being ripped apart, like nails on a chalkboard mixed with a scream. His teeth hurt because of the noise. Then he looked at her teeth. They were all sharp and lined up like teeth in a shark's mouth. Made to rip meat. Ryan stepped back without meaning to. The girl's eyes followed him perfectly. Her body tensed up, and her muscles coiled like a spring ready to let go. Okay, Ryan said, trying to stay calm. "Okay, I understand. You're scared. That's okay. We'll go slowly with this." He carefully stepped forward and reached for the control panel next to the cell. He might be able to unlock the door and open it the right way. He heard it right after his fingers touched the panel. There was a deep grinding sound coming from below him. The floor shook. Ryan looked down and saw a crack spreading across the metal deck. No, he said quietly. The whole floor fell apart. Ryan felt himself falling for a second before hitting a lower platform hard. The hit knocked the wind out of him. Alarms for emergency started going off all over the place. In the dark, red lights flashed. Then there were the bulkheads. Huge metal doors that are meant to keep damaged parts of the station from getting in. They came down like guillotine blades, making sounds like thunder when they hit. One fell right in front of Ryan. One more behind him. To his left, a third. Ryan was in a space that was barely bigger than a walk-in closet when the noise finally stopped. It was already getting harder to breathe because the air was getting thicker. His helmet display showed that the levels of oxygen were going down. And he wasn't the only one. He and the girl had fallen through the floor together. The broken cell had completely fallen apart, letting her go. Now she was standing up, crouched down, and staring at Ryan with hungry black eyes. When the red emergency lights came on, her blue skin looked purple, and her teeth shone when she opened her mouth. She walked slowly toward him, and her feet didn't make any noise on the metal floor. Ryan saw that she had claws when her fingers spread wide. Long, curved claws that looked like they could cut through his suit. Ryan hurried back until his back hit the cold metal of the bulkhead. There was no place to go. There is no way out. He reached for his emergency beacon on his belt, but it wasn't there. It must have fallen when the building fell. He tried to talk to him. "Command, this is Cole. I need to be taken out right away. The building is static." All he could hear was dead static. Ryan could see the girl breathing now that she was so close. She moved around him like a wolf would around hurt prey. There was a low growl coming from deep inside her chest. Ryan thought it sounded like a machine about to break. He pushed himself flat against the wall to make himself as small as possible. His mind raced through what he had learned. Everything he knew about how to deal with unknown species and first contact protocols. None of it had gotten him ready for this. The girl stopped going around. She was now standing right in front of him, about 6 feet away. She tilted her head to one side and looked at him. Ryan could see that those black eyes were smart. She wasn't just doing what came to her. She was thinking about him, judging him, and making a choice about what to do with him. Ryan's eyes moved quickly around the small room, looking for anything that could help. He saw the emergency supply locker that was built into the wall at the far end. There would be food, water, medical supplies, and maybe even tools he could use. But it was in her part of the room. The girl was between him and the locker, and she didn't look like she was going to move. When the floor fell, a support beam fell at an angle. It made a small barrier between them, which was better than nothing. Ryan carefully moved behind it, making sure the beam was between him and the girl. She watched him move around but didn't attack. Not yet. He could hear his heart beating inside his helmet. He was stuck in a locked room with an alien that clearly saw him as a threat. The life support wasn't working. He couldn't talk to anyone. No one knew for sure where he was in the building. Ryan took a shaky breath and tried to clear his head. Eventually the team that would save them would show up. They would notice if he didn't check in. But that could take a long time. A week maybe. Could he stay in here with her for that long? The girl hissed again, this time quieter but still threatening. Her claws dragged across the metal floor. Ryan felt a sense of dread as he realized that she wasn't just afraid of him. She was thinking about killing him. He studied aliens. He had looked at a lot of different kinds of aliens. He had always thought that being smart meant being able to talk to and understand other people. Ryan thought he might have been wrong when he looked into those black eyes. Maybe some gaps were just too big to fill. Maybe sometimes the only thing that mattered was staying alive. The temperature in the closed-off area was already going down. Even with his helmet on, Ryan could see his breath now. They were stuck here together because of broken systems and twisted metal. Two scared beings from different worlds, each wondering if the other would live through the experience. It had been 3 days since Ryan and the alien girl had been stuck together. 3 long days spent in that cold metal box, breathing air that tasted like rust and fear. Ryan had begun to notice small things about her that helped him figure out how she worked. She never really slept like people do. Instead, she would close her big black eyes for 20 to 30 minutes at a time and then wake up with a bang, like someone had shot a gun. And every time she went to sleep, she always faced him. All the time. Her body would curl up tight, but her head stayed pointed at him, as if she needed to know where he was even when she was asleep. She walked around when she was awake. She moved back and forth across her side of the small space. The metal floor didn't make much noise when she walked on it with her bare feet. She would sometimes walk back and forth for hours, her movements quick and nervous. Ryan realized that she walked more when the station's noises got louder, like the groaning metal and hissing pipes that reminded them both that this place was falling apart around them. But she mostly just looked at him. It looked like those black eyes never blinked. They watched every little thing he did. Her eyes followed him as he moved his weight. She got tense when he reached for his water bottle. She would move right away to keep as much distance between them as possible if he stood up to stretch his legs. It was tiring to be watched like that, like something was studying you to see if you were food or a threat. Ryan's first priority had been the emergency supply locker. He had waited on that terrible first day after the bulkhead slammed down and trapped them. He watched the girl watch him for what seemed like hours. At last her eyes were closed. She had rolled into a tight defensive ball, and her breathing had slowed down a little. Ryan moved like he was trying to stop a bomb from going off. Every move was planned out and took a long time. He had to walk almost 15 minutes to get to the locker. He was shaking as he typed in the override code. The locker clicked open and the noise made the girl's ear twitch, but she kept her eyes closed. There were protein packs, water pouches, a basic first aid kit, and some thermal blankets for emergencies inside. Ryan took what he could carry and made the long, slow trip back to his corner. His heart didn't stop racing until he sat down again with his back against the wall. Ryan sat in his usual spot on the third day. He had 3 protein packs in his hands. He was trying to give them out in small amounts. There were probably 20 packs in the locker. They would have to make it last if rescue took a week. He tried not to think about what would happen if rescue took longer than that. He ripped open the package and took a bite. The protein paste tasted like cardboard with fake chicken flavor added. Ryan chewed slowly, forcing himself to eat even though he wasn't very hungry. He didn't want to eat because he was stressed, but he knew he needed to stay strong. The girl was also sitting across from him. She had her thin arms wrapped around her legs, which were pulled up to her chest. Ryan could see her ribs through her blue skin. She was very hungry. He had known it since the first time he saw her in that cell, but it was getting worse. There were dark pits under her eyes. Her movements were getting slower, less aggressive, and more sleepy. She was looking at the food he was holding. Not with anger or violence this time. Ryan's chest hurt from how hard he was staring. He looked down at the protein pack that was only half eaten. After that, he turned to her again. He made a choice in his mind that could be very dumb or the best thing he could do. Ryan finished chewing the piece of food in his mouth, then carefully put the rest of the pack on the floor in front of him. The girl's eyes followed the movement. Her body got a little tense as if she were getting ready for a trick. Ryan pushed the pack forward with just his fingertips. It slid across the scratched metal deck and into the space between them. That neutral zone they had both been careful to stay out of for 3 days. There was an invisible line between their corners that was about 6 feet wide, and neither of them had crossed it. The pack came to a stop right in the middle. Ryan slowly pulled his hand away. Then he did something that went against every instinct for survival in his body. He looked away. Not completely. He wasn't dumb enough to look away from her completely, but he did turn his body to the side. Directly staring at an animal was a threat. Looking away meant giving in or at least being neutral. He stayed put. Minutes went by. The station made creaking and groaning noises all around them. Ryan's neck began to hurt from holding his head at that strange angle. He was about to give up when he heard it. A soft scraping noise. Metal claws. He kept his eyes on the ground, but he could see something moving out of the corner of his eye. The girl had stopped being defensive. She was crouched down and moving forward, with her body close to the ground. She moved like water, smooth and quiet except for the sound of her claws. She quickly grabbed the protein pack when she got to it. Then she quickly scrambled back to her corner, so fast that Ryan barely saw her move. He heard plastic ripping. Sounds of wet chewing. She was eating it quickly and with a lot of need, like someone who hadn't eaten real food in weeks. Possibly months. Ryan took a deep breath again. He looked back and saw her in her corner, holding an empty protein pack wrapper in her hands. She was licking the inside of it to get every last bit of the paste. Their black eyes met across the room. She didn't hiss for the first time. Ryan did it again the next day. This time he only ate a quarter of the pack before pushing the rest toward her. She didn't wait as long to take it. 5 minutes instead of 10 maybe. And she didn't run back to her corner as quickly. She took it on the 4th day but only after 2 minutes. Things really changed on the 5th day. Ryan opened the protein pack all the way, which is how you're supposed to do it, so it was easy to squeeze out the paste. He ate his share, then put the open pack on the floor and pushed it toward the middle. The girl got up. This time she didn't crouch, she just walked forward. She kept looking up at Ryan, but her eyes were on the food pack. Checking him out. Making sure he didn't do anything. She got to the pack and picked it up. She didn't run back though. She stayed there. In the middle of the field. She stood only 6 feet away from him and squeezed the paste into her mouth. Then she made a noise. It wasn't the awful hissing sound or the low growl. This was not the same. More gentle. It sounded a lot like a cat's purr, but it also had a clicking sound. Click click purr. Click click purr. Ryan felt something change in his chest. Maybe hope. Or just relief that she wasn't going to kill him while he slept. "You're welcome," he said quietly. When she heard his voice, she turned her head. Ryan saw that the pointed ears were so thin that he could almost see through them, and they moved on their own. One turned to face him while the other kept its eyes on the door, ready to listen for trouble. Ryan knew that she had probably been in that cell by herself for a long time. She might have forgotten what voices sounded like. Or maybe she had never heard one that didn't mean pain before. After that, he began to talk to her. He didn't think she would understand, but the silence was driving him crazy. There was noise coming from the station, but it wasn't human. The sounds of dead machines, groans, hisses, and the occasional bang made both of them jump. Ryan said, "I had a sister," and his voice echoed a little in the small space. Kate was her name. She was 3 years younger than I was. You know how we used to fight all the time when we were kids? Dumb things. She would take my things and I would hide her dolls. Our mom would get really angry with us. She was looking at him. She tilted her head a little as if she were trying to understand. We had these dogs when we were kids. 2 of them. Buster and Bailey are big dumb golden retrievers. They were really dumb. We had to take Buster to the vet right away because he ate a whole chocolate cake off the counter. Cost my parents about $500. But those dogs were very loyal. They slept at the foot of my bed every night. Ryan smiled when he thought of it. Thinking about home made me feel good. About everyday things. He talked about a world where he wasn't stuck in a metal box with an alien who might still eat him. "I miss Earth sometimes," he said. "I've been in space for 4 years now. Out here you can see a lot of amazing things. But nothing beats sitting on your back porch in the summer, drinking a beer and listening to the crickets. You probably don't know what crickets are. They are tiny bugs that make noise at night. You know how annoying they are, but also kind of peaceful." When he spoke, the girl's ears moved. Now both of them were paying attention to him. She sat down in the neutral zone and listened. She stared into his black eyes, watching his mouth move and his face change as he spoke. Ryan talked about his job, the first alien species he had ever met, his favorite foods, and the time he broke his arm when he was 9 by falling out of a tree. He talked about everything and anything to fill the silence and make this terrible situation feel a little less hopeless. And she paid attention. This strange, scarred, dangerous creature from another world sat there and listened to him talk about Earth like it was the most important thing in the world. Ryan swore under his breath as pain shot through his hand. The jagged piece of metal fit perfectly in his palm, cutting through the thin work glove like it was paper. The cut started to bleed right away and bright red drops fell onto the gray metal deck below. "Damn it," he said, pulling his hand back and putting it on his chest. The cut wasn't deep enough to be dangerous, but it was long, going from the base of his thumb to almost his wrist. It hurt a lot. He had been trying to pry open one of the wall panels with a piece of scrap metal for the past hour. The environmental controls for this part were behind that panel. Ryan had hoped that if he could get to them, he might be able to send a signal of some kind. Maybe he could turn something off and set off an alarm that would let the rescue team know exactly where he was. But the panel had been stuck because it had been neglected and gotten wet for years. Ryan was putting all of his weight on it when the metal piece slipped and hit his hand instead. His clenched fist was now steadily dripping blood. He could feel it running down his wrist and into his sleeve. He could smell metal in the air. Ryan's other hand fumbled for the medical kit on his belt. His fingers felt heavy and clumsy. He had to try 3 times to get the kit off his belt clip. His hands were moving. Ryan told himself that it was just the adrenaline from the injury, but he knew that wasn't the whole story. For the past 2 days the temperature had been getting lower. Parts of the life support system were failing all over the station. Every hour their sealed room got colder. It was probably about 40 degrees right now. Ryan could see his breath because it was so cold. It was so cold that his fingers weren't working right. He finally got the first aid kit open and used his teeth to pull out an antiseptic wipe because his good hand was busy holding the hurt one. But something stopped him from ripping open the package. Moving. In his side vision. Ryan's head jerked to the side. The girl from another planet was coming toward him. Not the usual slow, careful movement either. She was walking straight toward him, on purpose, closer than she had ever been before. Ryan's muscles all tightened up. This was it. He was hurt, weak, and not paying attention. Maybe she had been waiting for this moment all along. She might have been sharing food with him just to wait until he was weak. But she wasn't moving like a hunter. There was something different about how she moved. Her shoulders were relaxed, not hunched over. Her claws were not out, they were retracted. She had something in her hands. Ryan knew it right away. It was a small metal box with scratches and dents. From the locker, some of the emergency supplies. One of the things he hadn't gotten on that first frantic trip. She must have gotten it back later and was keeping it in her corner. He had seen her sitting on something from time to time, but he didn't think much of it. She stopped about 3 feet from him. She was closer than she had ever been. Ryan could see things he had never seen before because they were so close. The way her skin looked like it had a faint sheen like oil on water. The fact that her black eyes weren't completely black and had little silver flecks in them like stars. The way her chest rose and fell quickly as she breathed. She made a noise. That soft clicking sound he had heard before. Click, click, click. Then she held out the metal case to him. Ryan looked at her. His hurt hand was still pressed against his chest, and blood was dripping between his fingers. He held the useless antiseptic wipe in his other hand. He didn't move. Couldn't move. His mind was trying to make sense of what was going on. She clicked again, this time with more force. She shook the case a little, as if she were trying to tell him something. Take it. That's what the gesture meant. Take it. Ryan reached out his bleeding hand to her slowly, as if he were moving through honey. Hand up. Weak. Trusting. When the girl saw the blood, she flinched. Her eyes got big and her body got tense, as if she might run away. But she didn't leave. She looked at his hand, then his face, and then back at his hand. She then squatted down to his level. 3 long fingers and a thumb on each hand opened the metal case. There were more medical supplies inside. Bandages, sealant strips, another antiseptic wipe, and some patches for pain medication. She had been stockpiling medical supplies, holding on to them for herself. But now she was giving them to him. The girl took out an antiseptic wipe, which was the same kind Ryan had been trying to open. She moved slowly and carefully. She had been keeping an eye on him. Ryan suddenly understood that. She had been watching and learning every time he cleaned up small cuts or scrapes over the past week. She ripped open the package of wipes with her teeth just like he always did. After that, she took his hand. Ryan made himself stay still as her fingers touched his skin for the first time. Her hands were cooler than his, but not too cold. It felt a little rough, like very fine sandpaper. She held his wrist gently, with her thumb on one side and 2 fingers on the other. It was surprising how careful she was for someone with claws. Then she put the antiseptic wipe on his cut. Ryan hissed in pain. The antiseptic hurt like fire on the open wound. He wanted to pull away, but the girl held on a little tighter. Not hard enough to hurt, but hard enough to keep him still. This time she made the clicking sound again, but it was quieter. Ryan could have sworn it sounded comforting. She seemed to be saying, I know it hurts, but stay still. She cleaned the wound with slow, clumsy motions. She wasn't as skilled as a doctor, and in some places she pushed too hard. But she was making an effort, really giving it their all. Her black eyes were completely on his hand, and her face showed that she was very focused. She took out a sealant strip when the bleeding slowed down. Ryan had done this before. They were like liquid bandages that covered wounds to protect them. She carefully put it over the cut after peeling off the backing, just like she had seen him do. For a short time the sealant hurt, but then it went numb. The blood stopped. The girl used her fingers to press down on the edges to make sure it was sealed well. She then looked up at him and their eyes met. Thank you, Ryan said softly. His voice was rough and full of feeling. This was not what he had planned. I didn't think she would be nice. I didn't think she would care if he bled or not. When she looked at him, there was no fear in her eyes for the first time since he found her in that cell. No violence. No thought given to whether he was a threat. Just out of curiosity. She was staring at him like he was a puzzle she was trying to solve. It was like she was wondering what kind of animal says, thank you, shares food and talks about dogs and sisters. Ryan held his breath as she slowly reached out. For a brief moment, her finger touched his cheek. A very light touch. After that, she stepped back and went back to her side of the room, bringing the medical kit with her. Ryan sat there looking at his hand, which was wrapped up. Things had changed. There was a big change between them. She had crossed that line not to hurt him, but to help him. She had used up all of her hidden supplies to help him. That meant something. There had to be a reason for that. The rest of the day went by without a hitch. Ryan couldn't pay attention to the control panel anymore. He was tired and his hand hurt even with the sealant. He leaned against the wall and looked at the girl. She was sitting next to him with a medical kit and looking over at him every now and then as if to make sure he was okay. The temperature kept dropping as the hours went by. Ryan took one of the thermal blankets from his supplies and wrapped it around his shoulders. It helped a little but not a lot. The cold was getting into his bones. His teeth started to chatter. It was night, but you couldn't really tell in the sealed room except for the clock on Ryan's wrist. He tried to sleep while sitting up with the blanket pulled tight around him. But the cold made it impossible. Every time he started to fall asleep, a shiver would run through his body and wake him up. Ryan must have finally fallen asleep because he was so tired. When he opened his eyes again, he saw that something was different. He felt warmer. Not warm, but not as cold. Not as much like he was going to die of cold. Ryan's eyes got used to the dark. The emergency lights gave off a soft red light. He saw her in that light. The girl was next to him. Close but not touching. Instead of the usual 6, maybe 2 feet away. She had her own thermal blanket around her shoulders, but she had put herself in a position where their backs were almost touching the same part of the wall. Ryan could feel the warmth coming from her body. Aliens had different ways of breaking down food. Her kind might have been hotter than humans. No matter what the reason, the heat coming off her was like being next to a small heater. She didn't look at him. She was looking straight ahead, her eyes half closed, and her breathing was slow and steady. But she was there. While he was sleeping, she had gotten closer. Close enough to share warmth. Close enough to keep him warm. Ryan stayed still. No words were spoken. He just sat there, feeling the warmth, thankful, and something else he couldn't quite put his finger on. Maybe connection. Comprehension. The start of trust between two beings who had every reason to be afraid of each other but chose to do something else. The station creaked and groaned around them. The cold pushed in. But they made it through the night by sharing space and warmth. Ryan and the girl had a routine by the 7th day. It wasn't much, but it helped me get through the long hours I was stuck in that metal box. They each had their own side of the room. Ryan would open protein packs and share them with the others during meals. They had times when they were quiet and just sat and rested. And they got something new. Something Ryan had started almost by accident. Talking. Ryan got bored, and that's how it all began. He was sitting against the wall, running his finger through the dirt and dust that had built up on the floor over the years. He drew a simple circle without really thinking about it. Then he put a smaller circle inside of it. The moon and the earth. It was simple, but it gave him something to do. The girl had been watching him from the side. She was always looking at him. But this time she got closer, crawling on her hands and knees until she was at the edge of the neutral zone. She tilted her head to look at his drawing. Ryan pointed to the circle. Earth, he said. Then to the smaller circle. Moon. She looked at the drawing for a long time. Then something incredible happened. With one clawed finger, she reached out and drew her own circle in the dirt next to his. But there were lines coming out of her circle in all directions. Like beams of light. Like the sun. Ryan's heart started to race. Your son? He asked, pointing to her drawing. Is that your son? She made that noise that sounded like clicking. The one that looked like it meant yes or agreement or something good. Her finger moved again, making more shapes. A group of circles came together. Some are bigger, some are smaller. Maybe planets. Or moons. Or a solar system. You're home, Ryan said softly. You're showing me where you live. They drew pictures on the floor between them for the next hour. Ryan drew Earth again, but this time it was bigger and had rough outlines of the continents. He drew mountains and oceans. He made a stick figure with 2 legs and 2 arms. Human, he said, pointing to himself and then to the picture. The girl looked at it very closely. After that, she drew her own picture. Longer arms and thinner than his. There are 4 fingers on each hand instead of 5. She pointed to herself and then to her drawing. Ryan nodded with excitement. Yes. That's you. Those are your people. She made more drawings. Her claws were surprisingly sharp, making clean lines in the dust. She drew things that looked like buildings. Tall buildings with tops that curve. She put her stick figures in groups. A city maybe. A society. Ryan's tablet was next to him, and the battery was only 15% full. He had been saving energy and using it wisely. But this seemed important. He picked it up and turned it on. The screen lit up blue in the dim red emergency lights. At first, the girl flinched, but her curiosity quickly won out over her fear. She leaned forward, and the light from the screen shone on her black eyes. Ryan opened his photo album. There were hundreds of pictures on the tablet. Photos of his life, his travels, and the Earth. He scrolled to one of his favorite things. A picture of Earth from space. That well-known picture of the blue marble in space. Ryan said softly, "This is my home. This is Earth." The girl's eyes got big. She reached for the screen but stopped and looked at Ryan to see if it was okay. He nodded. Her finger ran along the glass, following the shapes of the continents. Her clicking sounds got faster and higher. Maybe excited. Or shocked. Ryan swiped to the next photo. An ocean at sunset with orange and pink light bouncing off of calm waves. The girl's face changed when she touched the water with her finger. She opened her mouth a little bit. Those ears that stuck out were bent forward. Ryan couldn't read alien emotions perfectly, but he thought she looked sad. Maybe homesick. She was missing something she had lost. He took her to see forests, mountains, cities that have lights on at night, animals. A picture of a dog that made her jump back in shock before she leaned in again to get a better look. She seemed to be fascinated by each picture. She would touch the screen gently as if she were afraid of breaking it or making the pictures go away. Ryan then came across a picture on the tablet that he had almost forgotten about. A picture of the family from 2 years ago. His mom and dad, his sister Kate, and him. They were all smiling at the camera while they were at a barbecue in the backyard. Ryan had a drink in his hand. His sister had her arm around their mom. His dad had on that silly apron that said Grill Master. Ryan's throat started to feel tight. He wanted to see them again. He hurt so much because he missed them so much. The girl made a quiet noise. Not clicking this time. Something else. Something that makes you think. Her finger touched the screen and it landed on Ryan's figure in the picture. Then she touched Ryan's arm. Getting in touch. Realizing that the person in the picture was him, but younger and happier. After that, she looked at Ryan and pointed to the other people in the picture. She tilted her head in that way that made her look like she was asking a question. My family, Ryan said. His voice sounded rough. My mom and dad. My sister. That's my family. The girl looked at the picture for a long time. Then she gently touched each person one at a time. The sounds she made when she clicked were very soft. Kind of sad. Then she did something that hurt Ryan's heart. She pointed to the family in the photo. After that, she pointed to herself. And she made a sound that sounded like a question. A sound that clearly meant where. Your family? Ryan asked. Where is your family? The girl stepped back from the tablet. She looked down at the dusty floor and started drawing again. But this time she moved in a different way. Tough. Matt. She drew shapes like the one she had drawn before. Her people. A group of them are standing together. Then her claw scraped across the drawing, tearing through the figures. Killing them. She started to breathe faster. More weighty. That hissing noise started deep in her throat. The sound that meant pain, fear, or anger. She made more drawings. Shapes that Ryan didn't get at first. Things that are rectangular. Moving stuff. Then he got it. Boats. She was making pictures of ships. And the ships were taking the people away. Ryan was sick. He got it now. Her family wasn't dead yet. They had been taken away. Caught. Maybe by the same people who put her in that cell. Maybe by slavers, researchers, or collectors who thought intelligent aliens were things to own instead of people to respect. I'm sorry, Ryan said quietly. The words didn't seem enough. Not useful. But he didn't know what else to say. The girl was trembling. She shook all over with emotion. The hissing got louder and louder. She kept scratching at the floor, leaving deep marks in the metal underneath the dust. Ryan was brave. Or dumb. Most likely both. He slowly reached his arm out into the neutral zone. He moved his hand toward hers, making sure she could see exactly what he was doing by telegraphing every move. No surprises. No threats. He put his hand on the floor next to hers. Not touching. Just close. There was an inch of space between them. A promise of comfort. Of togetherness. Of shared sadness. The girl stopped scratching herself. She looked at their hands. His hand had 5 fingers, pink tan skin, and short nails. Her hand had 4 fingers and a thumb, blue skin, and long claws. For a long time nothing happened. Ryan hardly breathed. Then the girl slowly moved one finger, so slowly that he almost didn't see it. Only one. It hit his knuckle. The least amount of contact possible. Not much pressure at all. But it was touch. Touch that is planned and chosen. Like. She pulled back after about 2 seconds. But her body language had changed. The constant stress that was always in her shoulders got a little better. Not gone but lessened. Like a fist that is slowly opening. The screen on the tablet went dark. The battery is dead. They had used up all of its energy. But it was fine. They no longer needed it. That night, the temperature dropped again. Now it was getting colder faster. The life support was definitely not working. You could see Ryan's breath in clouds. Even when he put his hands under his arms, they were starting to go numb. The girl was also cold. Ryan could tell by how she curled up tightly to make herself as small as possible. The way her shoulders hunched forward. She was shaking. Shivering but trying to hide it. Over the last few days they had both gotten closer. The 6-foot neutral zone had gotten down to about 3 feet. Now, when it was cold, they sat next to each other against the wall. Not quite touching but close enough to share body heat. Ryan watched her shake and tried to remember what his survival training had taught him about being too cold. Stay warm. Share your body heat. Wear layers of clothing. He was wearing most of what he had on. His jacket, his work shirt, and his thermal underwear. But she didn't have anything. She only had her skin and a thin thermal blanket that wasn't meant for such low temperatures. He made up his mind. Ryan slowly and carefully reached up and began to unzip his jacket. The girl watched him move with caution but not aggression. He took off the jacket and felt the cold right away through his shirt. He then gave her the jacket. She looked at it, then at him. She tilted her head in confusion. Ryan reached over and carefully put the jacket over her shoulders. It was too small for her. Her shoulders were wider and her arms were longer than those of a person. It looked silly on her, like a kid's coat on an adult. But she held it close. She pulled the fabric tight around herself with her fingers. She made that soft clicking noise. The one that meant yes, thank you, or something good. Without the jacket, Ryan was now freezing. But it was worth it to see her wrap herself in it and see some of the shivers slow down. Yeah, Ryan said quietly, his teeth starting to chatter. We're going to leave this place. We both. I swear. She stared at him. Looked at him closely. Ryan thought he saw something that looked like trust in those black eyes for the first time. She moved closer. They were so close that their shoulders were almost touching. He could feel the warmth coming from her body again, which was very close. She was giving him her warmth, just like he had given her his jacket. They stayed like that all night. Two beings from different worlds huddled together to stay warm and safe from the cold and dark. Talking without using words. Comprehension devoid of language. Living together. Ryan's watch said the sound came at 6 in the morning. A high-pitched scream that broke the silence like a knife. Metal against metal. Something sharp, hot, and pushing its way through. Ryan's eyes flew open. He didn't get what he was hearing for a second. Then his brain caught up with him and his heart started to race. A torch for cutting. Someone was cutting through the wall. The team that helped. They had finally tracked him down. Ryan said, "Thank God," and got up quickly. He had stiff legs because he had been sleeping while sitting up against the wall. Hey, we're in here. We're still here. Then he heard the other noise. The hissing sound. That awful hiss that sounded like metal tearing that he hadn't heard in days. The girl was standing up, pushed into the corner farthest from the door. She was stiff and all of her muscles were tense. Her claws were all the way out and Ryan had never seen them that long before. Also, her eyes had changed. They had lost that softness and trust they had been building. Her eyes were wild and scared, like those of an animal that was trapped and thought it was going to die. The torch was cutting through the bulkhead and it was starting to glow orange. The girl stared at that spot and the hissing got louder. She was shaking, but not because she was cold this time. Out of pure fear. No, 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 Ryan said quickly as he walked toward her. It's fine. They are here to help us. They're the good guys. It didn't look like she heard him. She was breathing quickly and shallowly. Her body was tense and ready to explode into violence. The cutting went on. A line of orange hot metal ran around the bulkhead door, making a rough rectangle. Sparks fell down on the deck. In the small space, the screeching noise was too loud to hear. Ryan stood between the girl and the door. He put his hands up to make himself look bigger and block her view of the cutting torch. Hey, look at me. Look at me, not at them. For a moment, her black eyes flicked to his face and then back to the door. The last screech and huge bang caused the bulkhead to fall inward. It crashed onto the deck, shaking the floor. The other side let in bright white light that made Ryan squint after days of being in dim red emergency lighting. 4 people in full tactical gear ran through the opening. They moved quickly and professionally with their weapons drawn and ready. Standard rescue protocol for situations that aren't known. When there are possible threats from aliens. The girl yelled. This time it wasn't a hiss, it was a full scream, a sound of pure fear that made Ryan's hair stand on end. He heard her body hit the wall when she pushed herself into the corner so hard. Her claws went up in defense and her whole body coiled up to jump. Stand down. Ryan yelled at the rescue team, his voice breaking. Put down your weapons right now. The main character, who had Lieutenant Grant's name stenciled on his suit, raised his fist. The signal for everyone to stop. She and her team stopped moving forward, but they didn't put down their weapons. 4 rifle barrels stayed pointed at the alien girl. Dr. Cole, Lieutenant Grant's voice came through her helmet speaker, distorted but clear. Get away from the enemy. We need a clear line of, she's not hostile. Ryan yelled. He still had his hands up, but this time he was looking at the rescue team instead of the girl. Putting himself in the line of fire. She's scared. Put down your weapons before you kill us all. There was a tense moment when no one moved. Ryan could hear the girl breathing heavily behind him. Could hear the charge packs of the rifles humming. He could hear his heart beating in his ears. Lieutenant Grant looked at the situation and tilted her head. After that, she waved her hand again. The 4 rifles slowly and against their will lowered to point at the ground instead of the girl. Thank you, Ryan said, his voice shaking. He turned slowly and carefully to look at the girl. She was still pinned in the corner, ready to fight. Now though, her eyes were fixed on him instead of the soldiers. His black eyes were wide and scared, but they were focused on his face. Ryan said, "Hey," in the same soft voice he had used for the past week. The same tone he used when they sat together in the cold, shared food and drew pictures. "Do you remember me? It's fine. No one is going to hurt you. I promise." She was still breathing quickly. Too quickly. She was breathing too fast. Ryan moved closer to her. He could hear the soldiers behind him getting ready, and he could hear the sound of rifles being held tighter. But he didn't pay attention to them. He looked at the girl. "These are my people," he said in a calm voice. "Like I told you. People. They came to give us a hand. To get us out of here. No one is going to hurt you. I swear." One step closer. The girl's claws moved, but she didn't attack. Some of the wildness was leaving her eyes. She was paying attention. Knowing his voice. Thinking back. Ryan put his hand out. Hand up. The same gesture he had done 100 times in the last week. The universal sign of peace, trust, and giving. "Come on," he said softly. "We're leaving this place. All together. We both." "Like I said I would." The girl didn't move for a long, horrible time. Then very slowly her claws pulled back. Her body relaxed a little. She reached out with a shaking hand to touch his palm. "Good," Ryan said softly. "That's good. Come on now. Stay close to me. I've got you." The extraction was the most stressful hour of Ryan's life. The girl wouldn't let anyone else get close to her. She would hiss and show her teeth if any of the soldiers came near her. Lieutenant Grant tried to get close to her once to check for injuries, but the girl almost attacked. Ryan had to get in the way of them. So they figured it out. The girl walked behind Ryan, holding onto the back of his shirt with one hand. He could feel her breath on his neck because she was so close. The soldiers made a loose circle around them, weapons lowered but ready. It was clear that they didn't trust the alien to stay peaceful. They walked through the station's hallways to the docking port, where the rescue ship was waiting. Every sound and shadow made the girl jump. She held on to Ryan's shirt so tightly that he thought it might rip. But she kept going. Still believed in him. Things got worse when they got to the ship. The doctors were waiting. Dr. Lisa Chin, the ship's chief medical officer, tried to explain that they needed to look at Ryan and the girl separately. Normal procedure. Look for injuries, malnutrition, illness, or mental trauma. The girl saw the medical bay with its bright lights, cold metal tables, and people in white coats, and she completely lost it. She hissed and backed away, taking Ryan with her. "Separate examination rooms are not going to work," Ryan said firmly, putting his arm around the girl's shoulders to calm her down. When one of the medical assistants tried to grab her arm, she scratched him with her claws, missing his face by inches. "She won't let me out of her sight." Dr. Chin frowned. "We need to follow the right medical procedures, Dr. Cole. She could have diseases, parasites, or anything else." "Then look at us together," Ryan said, cutting her off. "Or don't look at us at all. But you aren't breaking us up." Another tense standoff. But Dr. Chin was a smart woman. She looked at the scared alien girl and Ryan's determined face and made up her mind. "Okay. Rooms next to each other. Doors stay open. You can see each other all the time. That's the last offer I can make." Ryan stared at the girl. "Do you think we can do that?" She didn't know what the words meant, but she seemed to know what the question was. Her eyes went back and forth between Ryan and the two rooms, looking at the open doors between them. She clicked softly. "Not happy but okay." Ryan talked to the girl the whole time they were doing the tests, keeping her calm and reassuring her. The doors were wide open. She sat still on the medical table, flinching when anyone touched her, but she didn't fight back. Through the open door, she kept her eyes on Ryan. They were both underfed, dehydrated, and a little bit cold. Ryan got hurt a little bit when the first building fell down. The girl had older scars that showed she had been abused before, which made the medical team look at each other in a worried way. But all in all, they were fine given what they had been through. Dr. Chin wanted to watch them for 24 hours. She put them in rooms next to each other in the crew quarters of the ship. They were small rooms, not much bigger than closets, but they had real beds and doors that locked from the inside. "She's very traumatized," Dr. Chin told Ryan quietly while the girl was getting water and protein supplements in the other room. "Whatever happened to her before you found her, it was not good. Very bad. She might not be able to be around other people for weeks or even months. Before she can do things normally." Ryan nodded. He had thought that. "But you did well," Dr. Chin said. "Whatever you did in there, however you got through to her, you probably saved both of your lives. In that cold she would have died. And she would have definitely attacked the rescue team if you hadn't calmed her down. That could have turned out very badly." Ryan looked at the girl through the door. She was drinking water from a pouch and keeping an eye on the medical assistant, ready to run at any moment. Ryan said softly, "She saved my life too. She could have killed me the first day. But she didn't. Instead she chose to trust." Ryan lay in his bed that night, looking up at the ceiling. The room was cozy and warm. The bed was comfy. A real blanket and a real pillow. It should have felt like heaven after a week on a cold metal floor. Ryan, on the other hand, couldn't sleep. He couldn't stop thinking about the girl next door, wondering if she was afraid. She was wondering if he had left her. He heard it around midnight. A noise from the next room. The sound of metal ripping. Then the alarms in the hallway went off. Ryan got out of bed and ran to the door. He opened it and saw the girl in the hall. She had ripped the door to her room off its hinges completely. It was on the floor, bent and twisted. She was standing there, breathing heavily and looking around in a panic. She saw Ryan and some of the fear left her face. Security teams were running down the hall to answer the alarms. Ryan raised a hand to stop them. "It's fine. Stop right there. She's just scared." The girl walked over to him. Not running, not being mean. Just walking. She stopped at his door and looked at him with those big black eyes. Ryan got it. She had woken up alone in a strange place and freaked out. She needed to know he was still there. "Okay," Ryan said quietly. "Okay, let's go." He went back into his room. The girl went after him. She looked around the small room, at the bed and at the walls. After that she looked at Ryan. He sat down on the bed's edge. It was a small bed made for one person. The girl, on the other hand, moved forward and climbed onto it. She curled up into a ball and put her head on Ryan's chest to rest. Right over his heart. Her breathing got slower and slower. The stress left her body. And in just a few minutes she was asleep. She was really asleep, deeply asleep, in a way she probably hadn't slept since she was taken from her home. Ryan carefully moved around so he wouldn't be so uncomfortable. His arm moved to rest softly on her shoulders. He could see Lieutenant Grant and Dr. Chin standing in the hallway through the open door. They were looking at them with shocked and worried looks on their faces. Ryan just shook his head at them. This was how things were going to be. At least for now. For a long time, maybe. Stars drifted by outside the small window. They were going back to the nearest station, back to civilization, back to a world that was going to have a lot of questions about the alien girl and what to do with her. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Ryan lay there tonight, feeling the steady rhythm of her breathing and the trust she had put in him, this creature from another world who had every reason to hate humans but had chosen to trust one anyway. "Welcome home," Ryan whispered, even though he knew she couldn't understand. He didn't know where either of them lived anymore though. But it didn't matter. No matter what came next, no matter what problems and difficulties lay ahead, they would face them together. One day at a time. One moment of faith at a time. How they had gotten through that locked room. How they had learned to talk without using words. How they had chosen to connect instead of being afraid. Together.